Oh, look, a wild viewer appeared. Quick question. Where in this vast spaghetti bowl of a world are you watching from? Small village with one cow? Giant city with zero parking spots? Write it in the comments before I get distracted. And yes, forcefully recommend this video to your loved ones. Let's commence the chaos. I used to believe I had life figured out, that nothing could shake the foundation I'd built. My name's Mark Collins, I'm 38, and these days I work as a private investigator out of Chicago. Before this chapter, I spent 10 years in uniform, patrolling city streets as a cop. Eventually, I traded the badge for civilian work, thinking it might mean fewer sleepless nights and less chaos. Turns out, I was wrong about that too. I married Sophie, my college sweetheart. For 11 years, we shaped what I thought was a rock-solid marriage. Then there's my younger brother, Jacob. He's 3 years behind me in age, but has always been my closest friend as much as my sibling. Jacob's the kind of guy who commands attention the moment he walks in, a natural charmer with boundless ambition. It's no wonder he's become a rising star in Chicago politics, now vying for a seat in the Illinois State Assembly. Watching him chase that dream, I couldn't have been prouder, or at least I thought so, right up until the moment my entire world cracked. From the outside, we must have looked picture perfect, like a family untouchable by scandal or pain. Sophie had become deeply involved in Jacob's campaign, practically his right hand, planning events, advising on strategy, offering every ounce of her energy to see him succeed. She was brilliant, relentless, dependable, and her loyalty never wavered, for me, and lately, more and more for Jacob's political future. There wasn't a single thing about her behavior that screamed wrong. Late nights at Jacob's office, attending community events on his behalf, it all looked like selfless support. I respected her commitment to helping him. Honestly, I even felt guilty sometimes, too consumed by my own caseload to pitch in much myself. Being a private investigator means living by odd hours, staking out cheating spouses, chasing fraud cases, spending nights in your car with cold coffee for company. The cruel twist? I never once suspected betrayal might be unfolding in my own house. But hindsight? It changes everything. The first red flag came a few weeks ago. I'd wrapped up surveillance early and got home ahead of schedule. Sophie was in the kitchen, phone to her ear. The second she saw me, she jumped, ended the call so fast it felt rehearsed. When I asked who it was, she said one of Jacob's volunteers needed her advice on an upcoming rally. Her smile looked off, tight at the corners. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine. I told myself she was just exhausted from the campaign grind. Politics chews people up. Another time, she dressed up more than usual before heading to Jacob's for a strategy session. She wore that red blouse, the one she usually saved for our date nights, and I caught a hint of perfume as she passed. I joked, asked why she was pulling out all the stops for a political meeting. She laughed, breezy, and said, "First impressions matter, Mark. Even if it's just Jacob's crew, I like to look put together." It made sense. Sophie had never given me cause to doubt her. But little things, tiny, inconsequential things, began stacking up. In my line of work, you learn to trust your gut, and mine wouldn't quiet down. Late nights, she started texting more, smiling at her phone, turning the screen away when I walked by. When I asked, she brushed it off, just a meme, or a friend sent something dumb. No hard evidence, just that gnawing intuition whispering that something was wrong. And then came the night I couldn't ignore it anymore. It was a Tuesday. Sophie mentioned she'd be heading downtown around 8 to meet Jacob at the campaign office. They had to finalize plans for an upcoming fundraiser. She even invited me along, casual as ever. But I had paperwork piling up, so I told her I'd stay home. That's when I heard it. That faint exhale of relief she didn't mean to let slip. After she left, I tried drowning myself in case reports, but the numbers swam uselessly on the screen. My mind wouldn't stop circling the same thought. My wife, my brother, together, alone, again. By 8:30, I snapped. I closed the laptop, grabbed my keys, and decided to show up with coffee as an excuse. If nothing was happening, I'd look like a thoughtful husband. If something was, well, I wasn't sure I was ready for that answer. The October chill cut across my face as I navigated Chicago traffic toward Jacob's campaign headquarters. a modest storefront on Ashland Avenue repurposed into an office. I parked across the street. The windows were mostly dark. A few lights glowed faintly inside, enough to see the front room was empty. Chairs pushed in, desks clean. The lingering scent of cleaning solution suggested janitors had already passed through. No Sophie, no Jacob. Maybe I'd just missed them. Maybe they'd gone out. I stood there with my phone in hand, debating whether to call her. Instinct told me not to announce I was nearby. Instead, I followed the alley that ran alongside the building. The narrow passage opened into a small rear parking lot. That's where I saw them. Jacob's navy BMW parked beside our silver Camry. My pulse hammered. The alley was dim, lit only by a flickering street lamp and a single bulb over the back entrance. My footsteps softened instinctively as I approached, each one quieter than the last. I didn't know why I was sneaking, didn't know why my body had shifted into silent mode on its own. But I did. Through the frost-dusted glass of the back door, faint figures shifted in the dim glow inside. I leaned in, pressing my ear to the cold wood, straining to catch fragments of the muffled exchange. A man's voice, a woman's voice, Jacob and Sophie. The words blurred, but the cadence was unmistakable. My hand hovered on the handle, trembling. It turned without resistance, unlocked. Holding my breath, I eased the door open just enough to hear them clearly. "Don't worry, everything will work out," Jacob's calm murmur floated out. "I hate this," Sophie whispered, her voice frayed with guilt. "All the hiding. I feel sick about it, but I can't stop." A sharp pain clenched my chest, my lungs refusing air. They were alone, speaking in quiet confessions about what they'd been doing. Blood roared in my ears as I nudged the door open a fraction wider. The narrow office beyond was lit only by a single desk lamp, shadows pooling in every corner. Jacob stood beside the desk, jacket discarded, tie hanging slack. Sophie faced him, arms wrapped tightly around herself, her frame small and uncertain. His hands rested gently on her shoulders. "I know," he murmured. "I hate the secrecy too. Just until after the election. Then we'll figure everything out." Sophie let out a trembling breath and turned to face him fully. "This is tearing me apart," she said. "Lying to Mark. He doesn't deserve any of this." Hearing my own name from her lips said that way struck me like a physical blow. My throat tightened, rage and disbelief twisting together in my chest. Every instinct begged me to storm in, demand answers, scream until they felt my pain. But I couldn't move. I stood frozen, trapped in silent agony as the scene played out. Jacob pulled her into his arms. She sagged against him, resting her head against his chest. My brother's hand stroked my wife's hair, gentle, intimate. "I know," he whispered softly. "He doesn't. He's my brother. We never wanted to hurt him. It just happened." Sophie tilted her tear-streaked face up toward him. "We have to stop," she breathed, voice trembling. "After your fundraiser Friday, I'll tell him I need space, maybe a separation. I can't keep lying to him." My stomach heaved violently. This wasn't a single lapse in judgment. It wasn't an accident. They had plans. Plans to leave me. My grip on the doorframe tightened until my knuckles ached. Jacob kissed a tear from her cheek. "Okay," he said quietly. "After Friday, we figure it out. Together." His hands framed her face, and their lips met. A soft, practiced kiss that splintered me inside. A raw, involuntary sound escaped me. Half gasp, half groan, pure anguish. My hand flew to my mouth, too late to smother it. Inside, they jerked apart. "What was that?" Sophie's panicked voice sliced through the quiet. Heart pounding, I stumbled back from the door. Panic shot through my limbs like fire. I wasn't ready to be seen, not yet. Frantic, I scanned the alley and spotted a dumpster half swallowed by shadow. I dove behind it just as the door banged open, slamming against the wall. Jacob stepped into the alley, eyes raking the darkness, every line of him tense. "Is someone out here?" he called, voice sharp, probing. I pressed flat against the cold brick, lungs locked, heart thundering in my ears. The silence felt deafening, dangerous. He moved forward a few cautious steps, eyes straining into the shadows. Behind him, Sophie lingered in the doorway, arms hugging herself tight. "Did you hear that too?" she whispered urgently. "Probably just a stray cat," Jacob muttered after a beat. He raked a shaky hand through his hair and exhaled hard. "Get back inside." He turned away first, stepping into the building without hesitation. Sophie lingered a moment longer, casting one final uneasy glance over her shoulder toward the darkened alley before reluctantly following him in. The door closed behind them with a sharp final click, locking me out. I stood frozen where I was, my feet refusing to obey, lungs barely daring to take in air. The truth I had just uncovered echoed mercilessly in my skull, my wife and my brother. The words spun in a sickening loop, circling over and over, as if repeating them might somehow make them untrue. The numbness gripping me began to splinter, giving way to a volatile storm of feelings, rage crashing headlong into grief, each blow hollowing me out. When I finally managed to move, it wasn't courage but instinct that carried me backward into the safety of the shadows. Quiet, deliberate steps guided me through the alley until the street opened before me. I couldn't bring myself to look back inside. I had already seen far too much. My trembling hands fumbled with the car door, almost dropping the keys in my clumsy panic. Sliding into the driver's seat, I clutched the steering wheel as if it were the only thing keeping me upright. Through the windshield, I stared blankly at the office building, its lights flickering faintly against the deepening night. Their silhouettes moved behind the windows, shadows shifting, likely packing up to leave. Afraid they might see me, I slid lower in my seat, my heart thundering violently against my ribs. One by one, the lights inside went dark. The building fell silent. Then at last, the back door creaked open. From my hiding place, I watched them step into the parking lot, Jacob and Sophie side by side. Under the pale glow of a street lamp, his hand brushed the small of her back, a gesture too tender, too practiced to be innocent. The sight stabbed through me with fresh agony. At their cars they shared one last kiss, quick, almost hidden in the shadows, yet more than enough to break me all over again. I bit down hard on my lip, tasting blood as I fought to smother the scream clawing its way up my throat. Hunched low, I stayed motionless while their engines roared to life. Jacob turned north. Sophie headed south, toward the home we shared. As her car passed, the streetlight briefly illuminated her face behind the windshield. She looked thoughtful, maybe even guilty. I didn't move. Not when the night swallowed their taillights. Not when the silence became unbearable. Only when my shaking finally eased did I start the car and drift slowly toward home. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I had stitched together a fragile mask of composure, enough, I hoped, to walk inside unnoticed. It was nearly 10 when I stepped through the door. Sophie was already home, curled up on the couch, absently flipping through TV channels. Her head jerked up at the sound of me entering, surprise flickering across her face. "Mark, you're back earlier than I thought," she said. The words sounded casual, but there was a faint quiver in her tone, a tremor I never would have caught before tonight. She hadn't expected me to show up at all. I forced a smile, praying the dim light masked how pale I'd gone. "Yeah," I said lightly. "Finished up sooner than I figured. Thought I'd head home." I hesitated, then added, "How was the campaign meeting?" The pause that followed lasted barely a second, but I caught it. "It was fine," she replied, voice smooth, practiced. "We got a lot done. Jacob's really looking forward to the gala." "I bet he is," I thought bitterly. Aloud, I only said, "That's good. Must be exhausting, helping him after your own job." She gave a small shrug. "It matters, you know. I want him to succeed." Then, after a beat, "Oh, I'll need to go back tomorrow night. The caterer needs final numbers. Jacob asked me to help with RSVPs." Her lie slid out effortlessly, soft and believable. She met my eyes with the same tender smile that once felt so genuine. Now it only churned my stomach. She had no idea I knew. And in that moment it hit me. She would never confess. Not until they were ready. They were planning to dismantle my life on their timeline, not mine. I swallowed hard, pushing back the bile in my throat. "Sure," I said evenly. "Whatever Jacob needs." Relief softened her shoulders. She thought I hadn't noticed. We sat in silence after that, the low hum of the television filling the room with meaningless noise neither of us absorbed. The distance between us felt like an unbridgeable canyon, though she seemed oblivious. Eventually, I claimed exhaustion and retreated to the bedroom. Lying in the dark, I stared at the ceiling, the night replaying itself on an endless loop in my mind. Sophie's voice echoed from memory. He doesn't deserve this. She was right, I didn't. The ache in my chest was unbearable, a jagged mix of heartbreak and white-hot anger. When I heard her come upstairs later, moving through her nightly routine as if nothing had changed, something inside me hardened. The pain didn't vanish, but beneath it, colder and sharper, another emotion began to rise. Focused fury. Betrayal. By the two people I trusted most, my wife and my brother. They had made a fool of me, and they were preparing to destroy my life on their terms. They thought they held control. They couldn't have been more wrong. I didn't confront Sophie that night. Instead, I remained motionless under the blankets, feigning sleep while she slipped silently into bed beside me, careful not to wake me. The mattress dipped under her weight, and every nerve in my body screamed to react, but I forced myself to stay still. My heart pounded so hard I feared she'd hear it. I waited until her breaths deepened, steady and even with sleep. Only then did I open my eyes to the ceiling in the darkness. In that silence, I swore an oath no one else would ever hear. They would pay for this betrayal. Everything I had built, my trust, my marriage, my entire life, was gone, reduced to ashes. But from those ashes, something cold and unyielding took shape. Resolve. I would not play the victim. That night marked the beginning of my revenge. I already possessed every skill, every secret I needed to ensure Sophie and Jacob's world would collapse around them. Chapter 2. The First Sparks. Sleep barely touched me. All night, images of Sophie and Jacob flashed in my mind. Stolen whispers, glances I'd ignored, fragments of evidence I could no longer deny. By the time the first light filtered through the curtains, heartbreak and rage had hardened into something sharper. Focus. If they wanted fire, I would bring a wildfire. Sophie stirred awake, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. Through half-closed eyes, I watched her move quietly around the room, pulling on clothes, collecting her bag for work. When she leaned down to kiss my forehead, an ordinary gesture now hollow with lies, I clenched every muscle to stop myself from recoiling. I murmured a sleepy goodbye instead. Her footsteps echoed down the hall, the soft slide of her purse strap, the faint jingle of keys, then the muted click of the front door closing behind her. Silence. I sat up instantly, adrenaline flooding my veins. I had only a short window before leaving for work myself. I intended to use it well. Information, that was my first weapon. Her phone rested on the nightstand, plugged into its charger. She almost never left it behind. Normally, it never left her hand. But today she'd been careless. Perhaps she thought I was asleep. Perhaps she was distracted. Either way, the opportunity was mine. My pulse thundered as I reached for it. The screen lit up, requesting a passcode. I knew it by memory. We'd never hidden them from each other. Until now, I'd never even considered using it. For half a second, guilt warred with fury. My thumb hovered over the numbers. Then I remembered the hushed whisper I'd overheard in the hallway. I feel so guilty, but I can't stop. If she truly felt guilty, she had a strange way of showing it. I entered the 6-digit code, our anniversary. The phone unlocked without hesitation. The irony stung. Taking a steadying breath, I opened her messages. And there it was, a long thread labeled Jacob, marked with a briefcase emoji. My stomach knotted when I saw the tiny heart beside his name in the preview. I tapped the thread. The screen flooded with messages, hundreds of them stretching back almost a year. At first, they were purely professional, meeting schedules, campaign notes, budget updates. But as I scrolled, the tone shifted. Casual jokes, late-night check-ins, teasing emojis. You looked stressed today. Hope you're okay. The tiny heart beside his words burned into me, but I forced myself to keep going. Soon, the messages turned intimate. Confessions of longing, plans for secret meetups, quiet declarations typed in the dark. My stomach churned, but I didn't stop scrolling. Because buried between the love notes was something else. Money. Campaign money. Sophie, the hotel in Springfield was pricey. Are you sure it's okay to use the campaign card? Won't your finance team notice? Jacob, I labeled it as an out-of-town volunteer appreciation dinner. It's fine. Perks of being the candidate. My jaw locked tight. If they were funding their affair with campaign finances, hotels, dinners, gifts, it wasn't only immoral, it was criminal, and catastrophic if revealed. I kept scrolling. More hints. A bonus Jacob had given Sophie. Sophie, you didn't have to, but thank you for the bonus. You're too good to me. Jacob, of course I did. You've been crucial to this campaign. And to me. Just don't let my campaign manager see that check. Ha ha ha. Disgusting, but perfect. This wasn't just betrayal. This was leverage, enough to destroy him publicly, permanently. I took screenshots of the most damning messages and forwarded them to my own phone. Then, I uploaded them to a secure cloud I used for sensitive files. No risks, no mistakes, multiple backups. Step one of their undoing was complete. Their plans for the days ahead, at least from what I'd pieced together through their messages, hinged entirely on Friday's fundraising gala. One message, sent late last night after they'd parted ways, refused to leave my mind. Jacob, stay strong, just 2 more days. After the gala Friday night, we'll finally tell Mark, together. I don't want you facing him alone. I'm terrified, but you're right. He deserves the truth, even if it destroys him. Sophie, it won't be that bad. I'll be right beside you. We'll face it together. I love you. I love you too. My hands shook as I stared at the screen, nausea coiling in my gut. They imagined themselves brave, righteous even, preparing to confront me hand in hand, as if delivering their betrayal together somehow cleansed it. 2 lovers bound by defiance, ready to slice me open and watch me bleed. The thought turned my stomach. Fine. If Friday was the day they chose to reveal their treachery, then Friday would be unforgettable, though not for the reasons they anticipated. I drew a long, steady breath, forcing the heat of my anger into something cooler, sharper, a blade I could wield with precision. This required a professional's mind, not a victim's grief. Back when I carried a badge, every case demanded a methodical dissection. Collect evidence, identify weaknesses, craft a plan. Those same instincts would serve me now, not for justice, but for retribution. Carefully, I placed the phone exactly where I'd found it, erasing any sign of my intrusion. Then I pulled a notepad from my desk drawer and began sketching the framework of a strategy. Step 1. Keep up appearances. They couldn't suspect I knew a thing. My behavior had to stay unchanged, friendly, predictable, even warm. That also meant I needed room to maneuver. Working as a PI gave me some freedom, but I'd have to clear my calendar without raising suspicion. A convenient delay, a misplaced file, an out-of-town witness would buy me the time I needed. Step 2. Gather more ammunition. The texts were just the beginning. Jacob's questionable finances already hinted at exploitable weaknesses, but there was always more to dig up. Had he cheated before, made enemies, engaged in shady backroom deals that could implode under scrutiny? And Sophie, aside from the affair, her vulnerabilities were professional. She ran a modest event planning business and moonlighted as Jacob's volunteer. Her livelihood depended entirely on reputation. One stain could ruin her. Her laptop at home likely contained work files, maybe even evidence of their affair. Later, I'd find a way into her email. Step 3. Strike where it hurts most. Jacob worshipped his political career, his pristine image and steady climb. Sophie's weak spot was personal, the opinions of friends, family, clients. Social standing was her lifeblood. Family should have been sacred to both of them, but clearly loyalty wasn't in their vocabulary. Still, letting our parents in on the truth? That could wound them in ways they wouldn't see coming. My pen scratched furiously, ideas darkening with every line. Expose Jacob's campaign to ruin? Leak the affair? Or better yet, uncover something bigger than infidelity, campaign fund misuse, bribery, and if no proof existed, fabricate it. Another option flickered, physical damage. Jacob adored his BMW, pampered it like a child. The thought of it reduced to a blackened husk almost made me smile. Risky, yes. Arson left little margin for error. But I'd been a cop. I knew exactly what traces to leave behind and what to erase. Legal sabotage was another path. Frame them, plant evidence. Let the authorities do the tearing apart. I still had friends on the force, people who wouldn't think twice about following up on an anonymous tip. And if all else failed? Humiliation. A public reveal of their affair, perfectly timed for maximum devastation, could dismantle their lives without me lifting another finger. A whisper here, a leak there. I'd watch the implosion from the shadows. Divide and conquer. Pressure turns partners into enemies. If Sophie believed Jacob was only using her, what if Jacob suspected that Sophie, when cornered, might throw him under the bus just to protect herself? And what if I could be the one to make him believe that? The thought took shape as I leaned back from my notebook, eyes grazing the mess of bullet points I'd been obsessing over for hours. Even now, part of me struggled to comprehend that I was entertaining something like this. Me, of all people. I wasn't built for schemes or vendettas. My life had always been unremarkably clean, law-abiding. But every time I replayed those moments in my head, Jacob's hand resting so casually on Sophie's hip, Sophie's whisper of, "I love you," meant for him, never for me. The hesitation burned away. The anger left no room for doubt. They made their choice. They decided betrayal was worth the cost. Now it was my turn to choose how I'd answer them. The vibration of my phone ripped me out of the dark spiral. I snatched it from the desk. A new message blinked in the family group chat. Just me, Jacob, and our parents. Jacob. "Hey, big bro. Crazy week, just wanted to check in. Hope you and Sophie can make it to the gala Friday. This one's huge for me. Need extra tickets for anyone?" I stared at the text, stunned at the audacity. As if nothing had happened. Either he was bold enough to think I'd never find out, or he was convinced I was still oblivious. And then it hit me. They didn't know. They had no idea I'd uncovered them. Their ignorance was the one advantage I needed. I forced my hands to type back something neutral, almost warm. Me. Wouldn't miss it. Sophie's been working so hard. We're excited to cheer you on. His response came instantly. A grinning emoji and more cheerful words. Jacob. Means a lot, Mark. Catch up soon. I locked my phone, feeling my mouth curl into something that wasn't quite a smile. Support them both? Not a chance. But now I had a clock to watch. It was Wednesday. The gala was Friday. If Jacob expected Sophie and me to show up, she clearly had no intention of confessing before then. They wanted the illusion of perfection to last until the gala. Fine. I'd play along, husband, brother, fool, until Friday. They thought Friday would break me. They had no idea Friday would break them. The rest of Wednesday I drifted through routine motions, outwardly calm, but quietly laying groundwork. By mid-morning I was at my office, a modest PI rental downtown, shifting next week's meetings, pushing obligations aside. I told my assistant, Kara, that I'd be tied up with personal matters for a few days. She nodded, sympathetic, offering to help if I needed anything. I left it vague. Better that no one knew where to look for me. By mid-afternoon, the preparations were done. A favor called in, cash exchanged, no questions asked. By evening, I had a small bag of cocaine, discreet and untraceable, tucked away in my coat pocket. At home, I slipped easily into my role. I asked Sophie about her day. I listened as she talked about last-minute gala arrangements, stirring pasta sauce while listing off table placements and guest RSVPs. She looked calm, composed, effortlessly lying to my face. The weight of it settled in my chest as I nodded along, masking the truth behind an easy smile. "I'm proud of how much you've done. For Jacob," I said, my tone carefully balanced. She turned, soft smile on her lips, oblivious to the blade hidden in my words. "He's lucky to have you as a brother," she replied. I almost laughed, bitter, sharp laughter, but swallowed it whole. "And I'm happy to help," I said evenly. "It's going to be a big night for all of us." A very big night. She seemed convinced by my calm facade. After dinner, she kissed my cheek, thanked me for being patient with her schedule lately. I told her we'd have time together once the campaign wrapped. The lie burned as it left my mouth, but it kept her at ease. When the house finally went quiet, I waited until her breathing deepened behind the bedroom door. Then I moved. In the glow of her laptop screen, I worked quickly and quietly. Sophie's passwords were always sentimental: dates, lyrics, anniversaries. Within minutes, I was inside both her personal email and her professional event planning account. Most of what I found was ordinary, harmless chatter. Until I saw it, a folder marked Jacob Campaign, dozens of emails, documents, all neatly organized. The proof I'd been waiting for. Some documents were bare-bones drafts of speeches. Others, spreadsheets listing vendors, contracts, and attendees for upcoming rallies. But buried among those innocuous files were far more incriminating items. Travel itineraries for overnight campaign trips, scheduled for just the two of them. Receipts followed, dinners at five-star restaurants, reservations for lavish hotel suites. And then there was the email. Sophie had sent Jacob an invoice from a high-end jeweler, a custom piece engraved with 3 words, "Always yours, S." The date, 6 months back. Jacob's reply consisted of a single word: approved. No clarification, no delay. The meaning was obvious. He'd paid for it himself. Without a sound, I forwarded every file, emails, receipts, itineraries, to a secure, encrypted inbox I maintained solely for sensitive evidence. Misused campaign funds, hidden gifts, personal messages dressed up as business correspondence. Every shred of it was leverage now. The last email I opened listed the VIP guests expected at Friday night's gala. As I stared at those names, the framework of a plan began knitting itself together. If the truth about Jacob's private betrayals surfaced in front of local press and high-profile figures, the fallout would be catastrophic. Yet a direct confrontation in that arena carried too much unpredictability, chaos I couldn't afford. I tucked that idea away for later, focusing instead on immediate blows I could strike. By the time I finally collapsed into bed, the clock had edged past 2 a.m. Sophie stirred beside me, half asleep, mumbling about me pushing myself too hard. I whispered an apology for waking her, lying still while my mind churned with everything I had uncovered. Tomorrow, Thursday, would mark the beginning. I had the proof. I had the resolve. The hunger for payback no longer felt unnatural. It burned inside me now, righteous and relentless. They had no clue what was about to hit them. Chapter 3, Firestarter. Thursday, 2:45 a.m. The city slept. Autumn's chill clung to the streets, still and unmoving. Perfect conditions for what I intended. Hours earlier, I'd told Sophie I had to leave for a surveillance assignment, one of those late-night infidelity stakeouts. She'd sighed, offered me a sympathetic glance, muttered a reminder to stay safe, and drifted back to sleep. She wouldn't expect me home until sunrise. It was flawless cover. Black jeans, dark hoodie, gloves. I melted into the night, weaving through side streets toward Jacob's upscale neighborhood. My car sat hidden several blocks away, tucked behind a crumbling warehouse where no one would bother to look. I moved on foot, sticking to the patches of shadow between streetlights. Jacob's house loomed ahead, a spotless 2-story brick home, recently remodeled, perched on a quiet street lined with towering oaks and manicured hedges. At this hour, nearly every window on the block was dark. Only the occasional porch light cut through the gloom. His bedroom window was black. No movement. Jacob kept erratic hours, but tonight he was out cold, recharging for the busy days ahead. In the driveway sat his crown jewel, a cobalt blue BMW, gleaming even under the faint light of a street lamp. He'd bought it last year after a major fundraising win, his personal trophy. He never missed an opportunity to boast about its features, how obsessively he polished it. A faint smile tugged beneath my mask. Not for much longer. Crouching low behind a hedge, I scanned the street. Silence. Stillness. A lone car rolled past at the far end of the block, its headlights sweeping across the pavement before disappearing around the corner. The second it was gone, I moved. From under my hoodie, I drew a small crowbar. With a muted pop, I pried open the fuel door. Next came the rag, already soaked in gasoline and wrapped around a fragment of brick for weight. A crude fuse, but effective. I shoved it into the tank opening, leaving part of it exposed. The acrid scent of fuel bit at my nostrils even through the mask. No room for second thoughts? I flipped open a butane lighter. A steady flame bloomed at my thumb. One touch to the rag, orange fire raced up the cloth, and I ran. By the time I darted across the street and ducked behind a tree, the muffled whoomp sounded behind me. Heat licked at my back through the fabric of my hoodie as flames roared to life. I risked a glance. The fumes in the tank had caught. Fire spread along the BMW's rear, crawling fast over its pristine paint and rubber, devouring everything in its path. Within minutes, it would be unrecognizable. The car alarm erupted, slicing through the quiet, a shrill wail that echoed down the block. Lights flickered on in several houses, Jacob's among them. Time to vanish. Crouched low, I darted along the edge of the woods, heading for where I'd left my car. Another deafening blast split the night air behind me. Heavier, sharper this time. A tire blowing apart? Or maybe the flames had licked their way into the gas tank. When I risked a glance over my shoulder, the distant glow confirmed it. Firelight danced across the facades of the neighboring houses. Jacob's BMW was a roaring inferno now, thick black smoke spiraling upward in oily columns. Shouts erupted somewhere down the block, neighbors spilling into the street, panicked voices calling for someone to dial 911. For a heartbeat, a grim sense of triumph warmed me, a fleeting, hollow vindication. Then, I faded into darkness and disappeared. Minutes later, I slipped into the warehouse lot where my car waited. The first things to go were the gloves, the hoodie, and the mask, peeled off and shoved into a plastic trash bag. Beneath them, only a plain gray t-shirt clung to my skin. I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror, eyes bloodshot, hair a mess. To anyone else, I was just another exhausted driver out too late. Nothing about me hinted at fire or gasoline. I eased onto the road, winding through side streets and back routes, doubling back twice, taking turns I didn't need. Caution above all. My pulse still thundered, but underneath, a strange calm had settled in. Disturbingly easy. The blaze I'd left behind felt less like an ending and more like the first note of something larger, a prelude. By the time I coasted into my driveway, it was pushing 3:30 a.m. Sophie, as expected, was deep asleep. I stripped, showered quickly, scrubbing away every trace of smoke and gas. The ruined clothes and rags went into an old grocery bag, sealed tight. I stashed it in the corner of the garage, temporary. Tomorrow I'd dump it in a random bin across town. No way I was leaving it in hours. Crawling into bed, adrenaline still buzzing, I stared into the darkness until sleep finally dragged me under. The phone's shrill ring jolted me awake. Gray light filtered through the curtains. Disoriented, I blinked and listened. Sophie's voice, sharp and urgent, carried up from downstairs. I swung my legs off the bed and padded toward the sound. She stood rigid in the living room, phone to her ear, one hand pressed against her chest. Her eyes widened as she spotted me. "Oh my God, when did it happen? Are you okay?" she blurted into the receiver. A pause. "I can't believe this. Yes, hold on, he's right here." She muted the call, motioning me closer. "It's Jacob," she hissed. "Someone set his car on fire last night." I let shock flash across my face, loud enough for him to hear through the line. "What?" I snapped, voice pitched just right. Sophie tapped speaker, and Jacob's strained voice filled the room. "The fire department just left," he said, words shaking with anger. "The car's gone, Mark. Total loss. They're saying it was arson. Who the hell would do this to me?" Sophie's eyes flicked toward me, searching for how to respond. Leaning in, I let my tone fall somewhere between worry and disbelief. "Jesus, Jacob, are you okay? It didn't spread to the house, did it?" "I'm fine," he said, rushing the words. I was asleep inside. Neighbor pounded on my door, woke me up. Garage door got scorched, but the house is fine. The car, though, gone. Something exploded. Whole block woke up. I pictured him outside in the middle of the chaos, his prized BMW collapsing in molten wreckage, neighbors staring, red and blue lights flashing. The image filled me with something dark and quietly satisfying. Outwardly, I stayed calm. "Any leads yet?" I asked, letting a note of cautious concern slip into my voice. Jacob barked a hollow laugh. "Nothing. 2 cops and a fire investigator came by, peppered me with questions. They think it's either random vandalism or someone with a personal grudge. I swear, I've got no idea who'd do this." Sophie jumped in, her tone shifting into her practiced campaign cadence. "Could it have been a rival? Someone trying to intimidate you? Maybe one of their supporters?" "Could be," Jacob muttered. "Or just some lunatic. The investigator said it was definitely deliberate. Improvised firebomb. They found part of a glass bottle on my lawn that reeked of gas, and burned rags, no doubt about it." A chill crept through me at that. Glass and fabric. The rag. I'd assumed the blast had destroyed it completely. Apparently not. Maybe some trace of it had endured. I pushed that possibility aside, saving it for later. For now, keeping him talking mattered more than anything. "This is unbelievable," I muttered under my breath. "Listen, do you need anything? We could drive over right now." "No!" Jacob's response came sharp and immediate. For a brief second I wondered if he already anticipated that Sophie and I would instinctively insist on coming to him. Or maybe he didn't want us showing up together. Under normal circumstances, it would look suspicious. "I mean, thanks," he added after a beat. "But I'm fine. The cops have the report, and my insurance will send someone eventually. I had to let you both know. And Mom and Dad too, obviously. I called them already. They're losing their minds." I glanced over at Sophie. Her complexion had drained of color, her expression stricken. Seeing her genuinely rattled sparked something unexpected in me, a sharp, almost physical pang. She didn't know the real story. To her, this was just a random act of violence against the man she loved. One trembling hand covered her mouth, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I couldn't let her spiral. I had to play my part flawlessly, keep her convinced, keep her calm. The last thing I needed was Sophie insisting Jacob hide somewhere safe, or worse, entangling herself even deeper in this mess. I slipped an arm around her shoulders. "We're just relieved you're okay, Jacob," I said into the phone. "Cars can be replaced. If you need to get around, take mine." Sophie shot me a startled glance at the offer, but it served its purpose, painting me as the supportive brother while giving me a reason to stay close, to keep watch if necessary. "Thanks," Jacob replied. "I might actually take you up on that for a day or two. Need to sort out a rental or something." He hesitated, then let out a long sigh. "God, the timing couldn't be worse. The gala's tomorrow. I have to be sharp. This is the last thing I needed." "This could actually work in your favor," Sophie said softly, ever the strategist, even through her shock. "If people hear about it, they might sympathize. Could look like you're being targeted politically. Depends how you spin it." "I don't want to spin anything," Jacob snapped. "I just want whoever did this caught." There was iron in his tone now. I recognized it. His relentless drive, the same fire that had carried him through every political battle so far. He needed someone to blame, and he wouldn't stop until he found them. Every move I'd made until now had been careful, calculated, ensuring that target would never be me. "The police will take care of it," I said, keeping my voice even. "They'll dust for prints on the glass, maybe check nearby security cameras." Of course, I already knew they'd find nothing. Gloves, scouting the area, no cameras in that stretch of street. Still, dangling the hope of an investigation kept him from digging too deeply on his own. "Yeah," Jacob exhaled. "I'm heading to the station later to give a statement. It's been a hell of a night." "I can imagine," I said. "If you need anything at all, we're here." "Thanks, both of you," he said, and his voice softened when he addressed Sophie. "Sis, I'm sorry for dragging you into this." She flushed faintly at the nickname, Sis, a term he'd only begun using recently. Now I saw it clearly, an inside joke. A cruel irony, considering there was nothing sisterly about what they shared behind closed doors. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself not to react. "Don't be ridiculous," Sophie murmured. "I'm just grateful you're safe. Really, if you need help with calls, insurance forms, anything, just say the word." "I will. I've got a few things to handle first, but I'll keep you updated." We exchanged goodbyes and ended the call. As soon as the line clicked dead, Sophie sagged into me, trembling. I steered her toward the couch. "Hey," I whispered, "the liar, the hypocrite. He's safe, that's what matters." She nodded, swallowing hard. "When he said someone firebombed his car, I thought—" Her voice cracked. "I thought something had happened to him. Who would do something like that, Mark?" Her eyes searched mine, wide and trembling, an unguarded fear glinting there, almost childlike in its rawness. I exhaled softly, shoulders rising in a half-hearted shrug, palms turned up in quiet surrender. "Hard to pin down," I murmured. "Could just be some unhinged stranger, acting on impulse, or—" I let the pause linger deliberately, my tone weighted. "Or maybe someone who hates what he stands for, like you said." Unease darkened her expression. Her lips thinned to a tense line. What if it isn't random? What if it's a message, a warning? And what if they try again, on him or on someone close to him? "The gala's going to be crowded," she whispered, her voice trembling as though the thought itself chilled her. "That scares me." I reached across the small space between us and took her hand, gripping it firmly, grounding her. "Don't leap to the worst possibilities," I said, tone calm, steady. "Police will tighten their watch over him. And the gala venue, its security is ironclad." A reluctant, fragile smile touched her face, softening her tension. "Thank you, Mark, for not brushing this off." I kissed her forehead gently, warmth in the gesture even as bitterness smoldered under my skin. "We're family," I whispered. "We protect our own." An hour later, I stood on the porch watching Sophie's Camry disappear into the horizon, taillights dwindling as she headed toward Jacob's house. The instant she vanished from sight, the mask I'd worn slipped away, my features hardening into their true form, cold, composed, satisfied. The first strike had landed. Jacob was rattled, Sophie shaken. Neither of them had the faintest clue that the danger clawing at their lives had been seeded from within their closest circle. And now it was time to set the next piece in motion. Chapter 4, Framed. With Sophie tied up at Jacob's place that morning, the window I'd been waiting for finally opened, clear, unobstructed, perfect. The pouch weighed heavy in my jacket pocket, deceptively small for something capable of such chaos. A gift from Lenny, quiet, dangerous, and exactly what I needed. By 10, Sophie texted me. She'd be staying with Jacob for a while, helping him settle. Perfect. Cover I didn't even have to fabricate. I left home under the guise of heading to the office, steering instead toward Ashland Avenue, toward Jacob's campaign headquarters. The street was eerily still when I arrived. At this hour, the campaign staff were ghosts. Late nights meant late arrivals. I parked a block away, pulled a baseball cap low over my brow, and walked briskly to the building. The front door was locked, no surprise, not after last night's incident. Through the glass, I scanned the quiet interior. No lights, no movement, exactly what I'd hoped for. I slipped into the alley, heading toward the rear entrance, the same spot where I'd caught them 2 nights ago. A bitter taste rose in my throat at the memory, but I forced it down. Not now. Focus. The back door was locked too, though old and poorly reinforced. The frame had seen better days. From my wallet, I drew a sliver of metal, one of the tools I kept for PI work, usually to help locked-out clients. Usually legal, not today. I checked the alley, empty. Then I went to work. 30 seconds later, the mechanism gave a quiet click. I eased the door open and slipped inside, shutting it carefully behind me. The hush inside was thick, broken only by faint hums from dormant electronics. The place smelled faintly of old coffee and toner. Pale daylight leaked through slatted blinds, striping rows of cluttered desks and a cramped kitchenette with thin bars of light. I moved to the far end, Jacob's private office. The door stood ajar. Inside, the desk was a mess of papers, binders, and scattered campaign trinkets. On a nearby shelf sat a framed photo. Jacob, Sophie, and me, taken at the campaign launch last year. All smiles. The sight made my jaw tighten, mockery in its purest form. I searched his drawers carefully. Pens, crumpled notes, a protein bar half-eaten, stray campaign buttons. Then I found it. The black leather shoulder bag he never went anywhere without. Half-zipped, stuffed with receipts, loose papers, and his tablet. Perfect. I pulled out the pouch, slipped it deep into an inner compartment beneath the clutter, and left just enough exposed that a thorough search would uncover it. As extra insurance, I grabbed one of his business cards from the holder on the desk, brushed it lightly against the outside of the baggie to collect residue, and placed it back among his paperwork. If dogs came sniffing, or lab tests were run, the faint trace would be enough to damn him. Everything was restored exactly as I'd found it, no sign of intrusion. I stepped back, scanning the room one final time. Ordinary, untouched. Before leaving, I snapped a few photos of the planted evidence, my private proof, my trophy. Retracing my steps, I slipped through the back door. Silence greeted me, no witnesses. I left the lock as it had been, unsecured, same as I'd found it days earlier. Better that way, less suspicion. Back to the car, down the alley. My pulse thundered, but exhilaration thrummed through me. Now came the delicate part. Alerting the right people, in precisely the right way, without a single thread pointing back to me. I drove until the city skyline vanished in the rearview mirror, far enough that no one could trace my movements back to the campaign office. A faded strip mall appeared ahead, its cracked asphalt lot nearly empty, its storefronts forgettable. Perfect. I eased into a parking space, killed the engine, and reached into the glove compartment. The prepaid phone I pulled out had been sitting there for months, originally bought for a client who'd seen conspiracies everywhere. Funny how it had ended up being useful to me. I powered it on, dialed the Chicago PD's non-emergency line, and waited. Calls like these didn't go to patrol cops. They filtered through operators trained to handle anonymous tips. When the dispatcher's voice came through, I adjusted my tone, pitched it higher, laced it with trembling nerves. Hi, I began, adding shaky breaths between words. I need to tell someone about something I saw, but I can't use my name, please. The pause on the other end was brief. Go ahead. It's Jacob Collins, I said, letting the name hang heavy in the air. The guy running for state assembly. I was around earlier today before anyone else showed up, and I saw him. He had, I think they were drugs. He's planning to hand them out? At some kind of event tomorrow. Maybe a fundraiser. Maybe worse. I let the words spiral toward panic. If someone doesn't check, people could get hurt. Please. The dispatcher's voice hardened, alert now. This didn't sound like idle rumor to them. It sounded like a threat. You're sure of what you saw? They asked. Yes, I whispered, letting fear bleed into every syllable. I don't want to be involved, just look into it. That's all I'm asking. They promised the information would go to the right unit and asked if I'd speak directly to investigators. I refused, murmuring about retaliation, and ended the call. That was enough. I popped the back off the burner phone, pulled the battery free, a habit too ingrained to forget, and slid it into my pocket. Then I started the car, blood humming with adrenaline, and drove away to wait for the first cracks to appear. By mid-afternoon, I was back at my real office, hunched over case files I wasn't actually reading, when my phone lit up. The name surprised me. Laura. My brother's campaign manager rarely called me directly. I stepped into the hall, closing the door behind me. Laura? Mark, thank God. Have you talked to Jacob? Or Sophie? Her voice came fast and frantic, high-pitched from panic. My gut tightened, but I forced confusion into my reply. No, why? What's going on? The police came, with a warrant. Her words tumbled out. They tore through the office, found something. They arrested Jacob. I let disbelief sharpen my tone. Arrested? For what? Drugs, cocaine, she choked out. This is insane, Mark. He's not that reckless. Not now. Someone planted it. Laura sounded like she was unraveling, loyal, straight-laced, never prepared for a moment like this. Where is he? I asked quietly, steady but concerned. They took him to the 12th district. Sophie's with him. She's losing it, already trying to get a lawyer on the phone. Good. Sophie's presence meant chaos, confusion, and witnesses to feed the right story later. I'm heading there, I lied smoothly. We'll figure it out. There's no way this is real. Exactly. Laura seized on it. It's sabotage. It has to be. Someone's framing him. I gave it a beat, then fed her the conclusion I wanted. First the car fire, now this? Doesn't feel like coincidence. Somebody's targeting him. Yes, she burst out, outrage rising to match her fear. They're trying to destroy him. Keep everyone calm, I told her, gentle but firm. I'll meet you there as soon as I can. We hung up. The hallway was silent again, empty, but for my reflection in the darkened glass. I allowed myself a brief smile, small, sharp. Checkmate, little brother. I grabbed my jacket, snagged my keys, muttered something about a family emergency to my assistant, and walked out without looking back. The plan wasn't finished yet. I didn't need to step inside the station, just close enough to watch it all fall apart. More than anything, I craved the moment I could see Jacob's reaction firsthand, maybe even Sophie's, once the news detonated around them. The buzz of my phone yanked me out of the thought mid-drive. Another call. This time, Mom. I steadied myself and answered. Her voice came rapid, ragged with panic. Sophie had already broken the news about the arrest. I told her I was on my way, that I'd handle it, that I'd call the moment I knew more. Then I hung up, the police station already rising ahead in the distance. I pulled over across the street, engine ticking in the heat, and crossed toward the precinct, scanning everything, every movement. The media had beaten me there. Cameras hovered like scavenger birds scenting a carcass. Word always traveled fast, but this was lightning. Someone had tipped them, or maybe a scanner leak had done the work for them. A news van sat inches from the curb. Reporters clustered tight around the main doors, elbows out, lenses aimed, their collective energy vibrating with hunger. Better than I imagined. The story would detonate publicly in seconds, if it hadn't already. My phone vibrated again. A push alert flashed across the screen. State Assembly candidate Jacob Collins arrested on drug possession charges. There it was, unshakable, undeniable. A rush of exhilaration coursed through me. His name, his face, that glossy campaign portrait now corroded by accusation, plastered across every feed in the state. The station doors burst open, sunlight flaring off glass and badges. 2 uniformed cops escorted Jacob into view. Handcuffs bound his wrists. He struggled to maintain composure and failed. They were moving him, maybe to court, maybe to holding, maybe bail was already in play. None of it mattered. The cuffs said everything. He looked demolished, hair disheveled, sticking up in uneven clumps, a split lip, raw like he'd chewed it bloody, eyes squeezed against the sunlight, a flinch as the reporters lunged. Mr. Collins, any response to the charges? Is it true cocaine was recovered from your office? Do you claim this is politically motivated? Their questions crashed over him in waves as the officers forced him forward. Jacob suddenly froze, whipped around, wild-eyed voice cracking as he yelled, "I'm being set up! This is a lie! I've never touched drugs!" The shutter clicks intensified, the shouting doubled. In seconds, they shoved him into the back seat of a patrol car. The door slammed. Sirens muted. The vehicle slid into traffic, heading courthouse bound. I stayed back, blending into the chaotic crowd, just another onlooker. He hadn't seen me, but I saw her. Sophie, half hidden behind an unmarked SUV, body pressed flat to its side as if hoping to vanish. Her hand clamped over her mouth, tears cutting raw lines down her cheeks, her whole frame trembling. Next to her stood Daniel Norris, tall, sharp, immaculate in his tailored suit. I recognized him instantly. Jacob's go-to fixer, the campaign's silent bulldog. Of course he'd show. The moment Jacob's car turned the corner, Sophie cracked. She stumbled forward, hand out like she could reach him if she just tried hard enough. The reporters smelled fresh prey and swarmed, their focus pivoting in unison. Cameras swiveled, microphones thrust forward. Are you affiliated with Collins' campaign? Do you believe these charges are fabricated? Who would want to sabotage him? She froze in their crossfire, mute, stunned. Daniel stepped in hard, blocking the microphones with his body. No comment, not now. I cut through the crowd, masking the satisfaction boiling under my ribs with an expression carved in worry. Sophie! I called, voice pitched to slice through the chaos. Her gaze snapped toward me, tear-clouded. 3 strides and I reached her, arms out. She collapsed against me, sobbing violently. I cradled her, stroked her hair, murmured comfort meant for public consumption. To anyone watching, I was the model of family loyalty, a devoted brother, a loving husband. But behind the facade, the taste of victory lingered sharp and sweet. It's okay, I whispered, loud enough for nearby ears. We'll prove his innocence. Someone's framing him. Perfect. Let them believe that. Daniel's hand clamped my shoulder. Mark, right? Let's get her out of here. She doesn't need to talk. I gave Sophie a silent nod and steered her through the wall of spectators and media that clogged the station's steps. This time, nobody trailed us. They'd already wrung enough out of us, quotes, tears, a few raw moments to loop endlessly on the news. A handful of reporters shouted lingering questions over the din, their flashes still burning white in our eyes. I positioned my body between Sophie and the chaos, blocking her view of the cameras as I guided her across the street toward my car. Daniel followed for a few paces. I murmured my thanks, promising I'd keep him informed about Jacob's defense. His expression was taut but determined. He muttered something about heading to the courthouse to start bail negotiations. The moment he disappeared into the crowd, I opened the passenger door and helped Sophie into the seat. She looked wrecked, tear stains streaking her cheeks, mascara smudged like bruises, chest trembling with uneven breaths. I grabbed a bottle of water from the back seat and pressed it gently into her hands. Easy, I whispered. She sipped in tiny, shaky gulps, choking on sobs between swallows. Mark, he didn't do this, he couldn't have, she gasped. I know, I said softly. This ties back to whoever torched his car. Someone's after him, just like we suspected. Sophie nodded, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. We were at the office, just talking about the gala, and then cops stormed in. They pulled that bag out of his satchel. But Mark, he was stunned. He kept swearing it wasn't his. He said someone planted it. And I believe him, I replied, my voice edged with restrained fury. My little brother isn't some addict. He isn't a dealer. This is a frame job. For a flicker of a second, something shifted in her eyes. Gratitude, yes, but laced with guilt. Guilt over how she and Jacob had treated me. Guilt for the loyalty I showed him now. If only she understood why I defended him so fiercely. We have to think, I murmured as I pulled into traffic. Who benefits from this? Who would go this far to take Jacob down? Sophie swallowed hard. Maybe one of his opponents, Murillo, the incumbent, but car bombs and planted drugs, that's more than dirty campaigning, or... She frowned. Could it be someone he prosecuted back when he worked as a city attorney? That's possible, I said aloud, though I knew the real answer lived elsewhere. Could be personal, someone who despises our family. I watched her reaction out of the corner of my eye. Her face drained pale, just for a heartbeat, before she shook her head sharply. No, that's crazy. No one in your family would do something like this. Obviously not. Her quick denial almost made me laugh. The idea that I, the scorned husband and brother, might be the one orchestrating it all never even crossed her mind. The mask I wore held perfectly. I started the engine. Let's get you home, I whispered. We'll figure out the next move from there. As we pulled away from the chaos outside the station, I caught one last glimpse in the rearview mirror. Reporters scattering, racing to broadcast the footage they'd captured. Jacob's face lingered in my thoughts, shattered, desperate, screaming about being framed. And I had to choke down the grin that threatened to surface. 2 strikes. The golden boy was finally cracking. In less than 3 weeks, I had taken his prized car, stripped him of his untouchable image, and now his freedom. Temporary or not, the arrest would stain him. Headlines wouldn't let it fade. And Sophie? She sat hollow beside me, clinging to my hand as if it were the only thing keeping her from collapsing. Both of them were finally tasting what betrayal felt like. And I was only just beginning. Chapter 5. Public exposure. By nightfall, every local news outlet echoed the same headline: Jacob's arrest. I sat on the couch, my expression carefully blank, watching broadcast after broadcast replay the same footage. Jacob led away in cuffs, shouting that he'd been set up. Analysts filled the airwaves, debating the damage. Could his campaign survive this? Would the scandal obliterate his chances at the polls? I already knew the answer. Because the scandal wasn't over, not even close. The worst was still waiting. Upstairs, Sophie had finally surrendered to exhaustion. After bringing her home from the station, I'd held her as she sobbed, then convinced her to take a sedative, called in by our ever-helpful family doctor. By late afternoon, she had drifted into a restless sleep. Now, at nearly 8 o'clock, the house lay silent. I sat in the small den off the living room, door locked, the glow of my laptop illuminating the dark. An unsent email filled the screen. Its recipients, a carefully selected roster of journalists, some respectable, others notorious for sensational leaks. Attached files gleamed like loaded weapons. Hotel reservations Jacob had booked with campaign funds, always for two. Receipts lined up perfectly with dates from their messages. Screenshots of those messages, explicit exchanges between Jacob and my wife, with veiled references to me threaded through every line. The next strike was ready, and this one would finish them. The email chain laid everything bare, every incriminating detail. The engraved bracelet, etched with "Forever Yours S", was the centerpiece. Attached to it was a curt note from an unnamed informant, someone claiming Collins's wrongdoings went far deeper than the whispers of drug abuse already circling him. The message alleged he'd been entangled in a prolonged affair with his sister-in-law, a betrayal of his family and, more damningly, of his supporters. Donor money, it claimed, had been siphoned to fund secret getaways and lavish gifts for his lover. I read over the letter one final time, ensuring it radiated righteous outrage, the tone of a campaign insider who could no longer bear to stay silent. It even declared the supposed evidence had already been handed over to both the State Board of Elections and Collins's wealthiest benefactors. None of it was true, of course, but the press wouldn't know that. Exhaling slowly, I hit send. No digital breadcrumbs would lead back to me. The VPN masked my location. The burner email was sterile and disposable. Within moments, the message fractured into countless inboxes, beyond retrieval. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I stared at the monitor, bracing for the eruption to come. It didn't take long. By 8:45 p.m., my phone trembled relentlessly. Push alerts, frantic texts, notifications stacking faster than I could swipe them away. Breaking, new bombshell in Collins' campaign scandal. Affair with brother's wife? Donor funds misappropriated? Allegations escalate. Leaked messages claim Jacob Collins' secret relationship. One outlet had already splashed blurred screenshots across its homepage. Heavy black bars censoring explicit language but leaving enough for anyone to guess the rest. Another site ran a brisk summary of the allegations, an affair between Collins and a close family member. No names needed. Anyone with half a clue would put it together. A cold knot formed in my gut as I watched my private nightmare turn into a public feeding frenzy. But this had to happen. A scream shattered the silence upstairs. Sophie. I lunged out of my study, arranging my face into panic and confusion as I bounded up the stairs 2 at a time. Another cry rang from the master bedroom. She was on the bed, phone clutched white-knuckled, cheeks streaked with tears. When she saw me in the doorway, her eyes widened, wild with terror. "Mark, I..." Her voice cracked into sobs. I hurried to her side, masking everything. "What's going on? What happened?" I asked, my tone pure ignorance. Wordless, She thrust the phone into my hands, trembling. On the screen glared a gossip site headline, paired with a grainy photo, a woman unmistakably Sophie, arms wrapped around a man whose back, even blurred, was clearly Jacob. The caption was merciless. Jacob Collins and brother's wife caught in alleged affair. Leaked messages suggest donor fund misuse. I dropped onto the edge of the bed, eyes wide in feigned shock. What the hell is this? I whispered. Sophie shook violently. Mark, please, I can explain, she gasped, reaching for me. I pulled back from her touch. Explain? My voice was low, tight, coiled with fury. I scrolled through the screenshots, explicit texts, hotel confirmations, I love yous, every detail laid bare. My God, I muttered, letting my voice splinter at just the right moment. It's real, all of it. The trips, the messages, the promises. She staggered toward me, sobbing openly, hands outstretched. I'm sorry, she choked. Mark, I didn't want you to find out like this. I never wanted to hurt you. Didn't want to hurt me? The rage finally erupted, raw and unrestrained. I hurled the phone onto the bed. It ricocheted and hit the floor with a sharp crack. You were sleeping with my brother, Sophie, for months, right under my nose. How could you? She buried her face in her palms, wailing, I'm sorry, it was a mistake. A mistake? The laugh that ripped out of me was bitter, hollow. A mistake is one bad night. This was an affair, almost a year of lies, with my own family. Her hands fell limply to her sides, face twisted in despair. Almost a year, she whispered. We didn't plan it. It just... Don't. The venom in my voice cut her short. Don't you dare tell me you didn't mean to hurt me. You lied to me every day, both of you. I was halfway through my shift when it rose inside me, sharp, acidic, tearing up my throat. The words refused to stay down. While I was... My voice fractured. The ache in my chest made finishing impossible. Oh, God, I gasped, trembling so hard it felt like my bones would rattle apart. I campaigned for him. I defended him to everyone. And the whole time, you were laughing behind my back, weren't you? Sneaking into dingy motels, crashing at my brother's place, God knows where else. Sophie's head shook violently, tears streaking down her face. No, that's not true. We weren't laughing at you. It wasn't like that, Mark. We hated ourselves every time. Not enough to stop, I shot back, voice like broken glass. She jerked as though I'd struck her. I tried, she whispered, words cracking in half. We both did. I told him we had to end it. I told him I loved you. But then everything spiraled out of control. It got so complicated and... Her sobs drowned the rest. She stumbled toward me, hand outstretched. I stepped back, palm raised like a barricade. Don't. Just don't. Dragging in a ragged breath, I forced myself into something cold, stripped of all warmth. All this time I was blind. And you were going to tell me after the gala, right? That was the plan? I jabbed a finger at the phone lying on the floor, screen still lit with a text I wished I could unsee. Jacob's message. After the gala, we'll figure out how to deal with Mark. Sophie's gaze followed my hand. She froze, guilt thickening the silence. Yes, she choked. We were going to tell you. We couldn't lie anymore. We were going to confess. A bitter laugh ripped out of me, hollow and cruel. How noble. Wait until the big night's over, then blow up my life. Perfect. Her knees buckled. She collapsed onto the carpet, clutching the edge of the bed like it could anchor her. Oh, Mark. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you can't forgive me. I wouldn't forgive me either. I never wanted this. I never planned to fall in love with him. It just happened, working side by side with him, missing you while you were always gone. Oh, so now this is my fault? My voice shredded itself into something feral. I worked too hard, so you decided to fuck my brother? I barely ever cursed at her. The words themselves made her flinch, but I didn't care. Not anymore. "No, that's not what I meant," she sobbed. "It was me. My weakness. Please, if there's ever a chance, someday, you could forgive me." Forgive? The word tasted like acid. "You've burned everything down, Sophie. Our marriage is in ashes. My family is humiliated, and everyone knows. Everyone. It's splashed across every headline. Our parents have probably seen it by now." That last line pierced her like a bullet. Her eyes went wide with horror. "Your parents," she whispered. As if summoned, the landline shrieked from downstairs, the phone we kept only for them, ringing mercilessly. Neither of us moved. I turned toward the door, voice low, steel-edged. "I can't even look at you. I want you out. Tonight." She staggered upright, panic clawing at her face. "Mark, please! Where am I supposed to go?" "I don't care," I said, each word like ice. "Go to him. Go to a hotel. You've had plenty of practice with those, haven't you?" The sound that tore from her throat was raw, almost animal. "He's out on bail, staying with a friend. The press is everywhere. I can't—" "His career?" I let out a jagged laugh. "His career? I just watched it implode live on television. Maybe you should have thought about that before climbing into his bed. I backed him, Sophie. I trusted him. And he gutted me." I was pacing now, fury twisting into something darker, heavier, a wound I couldn't stop prodding. She crawled across the floor, arms wrapping around my legs, shaking so violently I could feel it through my skin. "Please, Mark," she begged, voice shredded to ribbons. "Please don't throw me out. I have nowhere else to go." Everyone will condemn me now. My name, my dignity, everything I am, will be weighed against this single moment. All I ever longed for from the very beginning was to remain by your side. That was my truth then, and it is my truth still. You have to believe that. I never once stopped loving you." Her fingers clutched at my leg, shaking and desperate. But I tore myself free with one harsh motion. "Is this what you call love?" I hissed, my voice low, bitter as venom. "You don't stab someone in the back and still dare to call it love. If you'd ever truly loved me, none of this would have happened." Her face crumpled, eyes swimming with tears, lips trembling as she folded inward, bowing her head to my feet as though she could vanish there. "You're right," she whispered, barely audible. "I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't deserve anything." Damn right you don't, I thought, the roar deafening in my skull. Out loud, the words came out through clenched teeth. "We're done, Sophie. This marriage is over." Her cry split the silence, raw, animalistic, but I didn't flinch. My voice stayed steady, merciless. "Tomorrow morning I'm calling a lawyer. We're starting divorce proceedings immediately. If you've got any sense left, you'll pack tonight. Take what you need. You can stay here if you want, I don't care. Use your savings to find a place. Or run to Jacob for all I care. But I refuse to breathe the same air as you another second longer." She collapsed backward onto her knees, hugging herself like she could hold the pieces together. Her eyes looked hollow, like shattered glass after a storm. "Divorce," she echoed faintly, as though the word itself had gutted her. "Damn right," I said, voice hard as steel. "You honestly think I'd stay married to someone who betrayed me like this? Not a chance in hell." I walked past her without a backward glance and left the bedroom. She didn't follow. Her sobs echoed through the hallway as I descended the stairs, each step heavier than the last. By the time I reached the living room, the ringing house phone had gone silent. My cell screen lit instead, my father's name flashing again. I drew a sharp breath, bracing myself, and answered. His voice was a storm. Fury and confusion rolled into every syllable. He'd seen the headlines. I told him the truth, my voice trembling at the edges. I'd just found out, same as everyone else. I'd been blindsided. There wasn't much he could offer, just fragments of shock and stumbling words of support. They loved me. They wanted to stand by me. I told him I'd survive, somehow. When the call ended, I sank into the couch, hollow and numb. Upstairs, Sophie's crying filtered faintly through the ceiling, a pitiful sound. But pity was the last thing I felt. Cold vindication burned clean in my veins. They were exposed, ruined. Jacob's political career obliterated. Even if the charges vanished, the twin scandals of drugs and infidelity would follow him forever. He was finished. Sophie's life would fare no better, her name in ashes, her career destroyed. Who would trust an event planner whose face had splashed across every headline as half of a sordid affair? Her friends would scatter, her family would retreat. No one would stand by her now. And the best part? Neither of them knew I'd been the one who set the trap. I wanted them to know. I wanted them to see it in my eyes when the truth hit. Tomorrow, when the chaos settled, I'd make my final move. Chapter 6, Revelation. Friday morning broke beneath a heavy sky, gray and suffocating with the weight of last night's headlines. The entire city felt muted, watchful. Most of the morning passed in a blur of phone calls from distant relatives, old friends I hadn't spoken to in years, co-workers offering hollow condolences after seeing the story. I played the part flawlessly, the blindsided, broken husband. I spoke of betrayal and heartbreak, confusion and disbelief. I hinted at suspicions but named no names, feigning ignorance of who had planted the car, who had planted the drugs. Every call drained me and fueled me. Each sympathetic voice reinforced the image I'd so carefully crafted. Me, the victim. Them, the villains. By noon, I knew the next step. I opened the encrypted messaging app we'd once used for sensitive work and typed to Jacob. Me. Jacob, we need to talk. I think I know who's behind everything. The car, the drugs, all of it. I might have proof. Meet me at my office at 2 p.m. Come alone. The read receipt appeared instantly. Minutes dragged like hours. Would he even dare show up after everything? But desperation has a way of forcing men's hands. At last, the dots appeared. He was typing. Jacob. I'll be there. I exhaled, slow and controlled. Step 1, complete. Next, I dialed Sophie from my office landline. Her voice was raw when she answered, hoarse from hours of sobbing. Hello? Sophie, I said evenly. A sharp inhale crackled through the line. Mark. I don't want to fight, I said calmly, a silk-wrapped lie. I think I've finally uncovered who's been targeting Jacob, and by extension, the rest of us. But this isn't the kind of truth I can relay over a phone line. We need to meet in person. Come to my office at 2 o'clock. Jacob will be there too. Whatever this is, we have to face it together. She didn't respond right away. The silence stretched, thick and telling. She hadn't expected me to reach out. Not after everything that happened. Finally, her answer came, quick and unsteady. Yes, I'll come. Use the alley entrance, I instructed. Reporters have swarmed the front. I'll leave it unlatched. A faint breath. All right. Thank you, Mark. Her gratitude trembled in the air, thin and frayed, like the gasp of someone barely keeping their head above water. I ended the call without comment and sank back into my chair. The office felt unnervingly still, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights filling the quiet. I'd sent my assistant home hours ago under the pretense of a family emergency. Truth was, I didn't want anyone here. This needed to be my stage, mine alone. Piece by piece, I stripped the desk bare. Framed photos of Sophie and me, case files irrelevant to this meeting, anything that could clutter the space or betray me. By the time I was done, the surface gleamed with a stark emptiness. I moved to the door, turned the lock, and left it cracked, just enough for them to step through one at a time. Then I opened the top drawer and drew out my Glock 19. Standard protection for a private investigator. I checked the magazine, clicked the safety on, and slid it back into the drawer, close enough to reach, invisible from view. I didn't intend to fire it. I only needed to know I could. At 1:58 p.m., footsteps echoed faintly in the corridor. A blurred figure moved past the frosted glass of my door. Then, a knock. Come in, I said. Jacob entered. His face was drawn, paler than I remembered, his eyes darting with restless energy. Mark, he began, voice frayed at the edges. I raised a hand to cut him off. Shut the door. He obeyed, the latch clicking shut behind him. Where's the evidence? He demanded, tension sharpening his tone. What did you find out? Hope and dread warred on his face, desperate for answers, terrified of the price. We'll wait for Sophie, I said evenly. I asked her to come too. That caught him off guard, his brow furrowed in surprise. He'd likely assumed I never wanted to see either of them again. But he said nothing, only lowered himself into one of the chairs across from me. Silence settled in the room, taut and heavy. He stared at the floor, fussing with a loose thread on his cap. I kept my eyes fixed on him, letting the quiet stretch until it hummed between us. Another knock, softer this time, came from the rear door leading to the storage room, right on schedule. "That'll be Sophie," I said, rising. "Stay put." I crossed to the back and opened the door. Sophie slipped inside, wrapped in a scarf and oversized sunglasses, a makeshift disguise. Exhaustion clung to her. Reddened eyes, drawn features, the kind of weariness that burrows into the bones. When she met my gaze, her lip trembled, and she quickly looked away. "Hi," she murmured. "Come on," I said quietly, gesturing her forward. She hesitated at the sight of Jacob, but stepped inside. I shut the door behind her and turned the lock. Now both exits were sealed. The three of us stood in a quiet that felt almost airless, no way out for any of us. Jacob broke first. "Mark," he said, eyes flicking between me and Sophie. "What's going on? You said you knew who's behind this. Did you get proof?" I moved back toward the desk, deliberate and unhurried. Neither of them looked away as I rounded to the far side, though I remained standing rather than sit. Placing both hands flat on the desk, I leaned forward. "Yes," I said softly. "I know." Sophie's hands tightened together at her waist. "Who?" she asked, voice barely audible. I looked at her, then at Jacob. This was it. "The one who torched Jacob's car," I said quietly. "The one who planted the cocaine, the one who leaked the affair." A pause. The weight of the words filled the room. It was me. For a heartbeat, nothing. No one moved, no one breathed. It was as if neither of them truly comprehended what I'd just said. Their eyes darted toward each other, confusion, shock, before snapping back to me. Jacob let out a sharp, mirthless laugh, disbelief etched into every sound. "What?" His voice cracked under the weight of shock. "What the hell did you just say?" A thin, icy smile pulled at my lips, more mockery than warmth. "You heard me," I said evenly. "I was the one behind it all, every last bit of it." Sophie's face went white, her skin drained of all color. "Mark, that isn't funny," she whispered, her voice trembling. I straightened, tilting my head slightly as I studied them both. "Do I look like I'm joking to you?" Jacob surged to his feet, his chair scraping violently across the floor as it toppled backward. "This is bullshit," he snarled. "You're just saying this to what? Scare us because you're pissed off? There's no way—" "Sit down." My voice cracked like a whip. The command carried years of practice, discipline learned from interrogations and wrangling unruly siblings. Jacob froze mid-protest. He stayed standing, chest heaving, but said nothing. I slid open the top drawer of my desk, each movement slow, deliberate. Their eyes followed every motion, muscles coiled tight. My hand emerged holding a Glock. I didn't raise it, didn't point it. I placed it calmly on the desk, my palm resting across the slide. Sophie gasped, clapping both hands over her mouth. Jacob's eyes widened, rage flickering uneasily with fear. "Mark," he said carefully, voice low and controlled, "why the hell do you have a gun out?" "To make sure you listen," I replied coldly, "and to keep either of you from doing something stupid, like trying to rush me before I finish talking. That's all this is." A heavy silence crashed over the room, suffocating in its weight. Jacob lowered himself slowly back into his chair, never taking his eyes off me or the weapon. Sophie stayed frozen, trembling. I stepped out from behind the desk, the pistol dangling loosely in my right hand. Not aimed, but impossible to ignore. My pace was slow, measured, circling them like a predator. "You want to know why? And how?" My voice softened, cutting through the stillness. "Let's start with why." Neither of them spoke. They only stared, horrified, transfixed. The next words ripped out of me like a verdict. "You betrayed me, both of you." "My wife," I spat, "and my own brother." Sophie broke down into quiet sobs, tears streaking down her cheeks. Jacob gave the smallest shake of his head, as if refusing to accept what he was hearing. So, this is revenge? He croaked hoarsely. You burned everything down, just to get back at us? A sharp laugh escaped me, bitter and cutting. Finally catching on, little brother? Jacob's face twisted, anger, shame, regret colliding all at once. Mark, I know we hurt you. Hurt me? I cut him off, voice snapping like a whip. That doesn't even begin to cover it. You obliterated me, or at least you thought you did. I turned to Sophie, my voice cold, precise. I was at your campaign office Tuesday night. I saw everything. I heard everything. The kiss. The plan to finally tell Mark after the gala. My lip curled in disgust. I've known since then. Sophie's trembling hands flew to her mouth. Tuesday. You were the noise in the alley. You heard us? I gave a slow nod. Yes. I followed you that night because I already suspected something, and sure enough, I walked straight into a nightmare. Jacob squeezed his eyes shut, bracing himself like he expected a blow. Christ, I muttered, pacing another slow circle. Their heads turned with me instinctively, prey following the predator's movements. So yeah, I was destroyed for one night. I stopped pacing, lifting my chin in defiance. Then I decided I wouldn't stay the victim. A bitter smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. I remembered who I am, what I know, what I can do, all the skills, all the resources you two conveniently forgot I had, and I used them to make you pay. You're insane, Jacob whispered, voice cracking. I raised a brow. Insane? No, Jacob. For the first time in my life, my head has never been clearer. I began ticking off points on my left hand, the Glock dangling loosely from the right. Wednesday morning, I went through Sophie's phone, collected every piece of evidence, texts, bank records, every filthy secret. My tone sharpened, almost a snarl. I knew just exposing you would ruin the gala, ruin your reputations, but I wanted more. I wanted humiliation. I wanted the law to chew you up. I wanted you helpless, exactly how I felt when I realized what you'd done. Sophie sobbed harder now, her whole body shaking. Jacob opened his mouth to speak, but I silenced him with a single glare. And then there's the car, I said, fixing my gaze squarely on him. That BMW you love so much? Beginning like that almost felt like something out of a poem. The memory of you in that narrow alley, bathrobe slipping open, eyes blown wide as the firelight danced across the wreckage, still pulls a grin out of me whenever I replay it in my head. Jacob's jaw clenched tight at my words, his face hardening. You nearly torched my house, he snapped. You could have killed me. I rolled a shoulder in an easy shrug. If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't still be standing here, I murmured. I kept the blaze contained to the car. I'm not a murderer, Jacob. My head tilted toward the pistol dangling loosely from my grip. If I was, you wouldn't even have time to beg. Killing you would be simple. I'd rather watch you unravel. Misery's the only justice you've earned. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard, my words settling into him like a weight he couldn't shake. That silence cracked when Sophie's voice trembled through it. The drugs, she whispered. You planted them, didn't you? You framed him. Jacob didn't even glance at her. His eyes stayed locked on mine, burning. Of course he did, Jacob hissed. Do you have any clue what you've done, Mark? Arson, narcotics, falsifying reports. You've piled up enough charges to rot in prison for decades. Maybe, I replied, my voice cool as glass, lips twisting in a faint smile. If anyone manages to pin it on me. But who's left to talk? You two? I gestured toward him with the pistol. You're a disgraced adulterer with a drug case about to bury you, career in ashes, reputation gone, and Sophie... My gaze cut toward her shaking frame. She's the woman they're all whispering about, the affair, the scandal. Neither of you exactly scream credibility, do you? Jacob's face went crimson. I'll prove it, he barked. Cameras. There's no footage worth a damn, I cut in smoothly. I checked. No prints either, I wore gloves. There's nothing connecting me to that bottle or your office. He shook his head like a man trying to shake free of a nightmare. We'll tell the cops, he muttered. We'll tell them everything. Do it, I said with a sharp, humorless laugh. Spin them the sob story, heartbroken husband framed by the vengeful brother he wronged. Sure, it's true, but it'll play like bad pulp fiction. They'll laugh you out of the precinct. Hell, they'll probably decide you're trying to pin your own mess on me, especially with those texts about the embezzlement. Shame they found their way into the press, huh? His glare felt like it could set me on fire. You destroy my life and still have the nerve to paint me as the villain? I stepped closer, lowering my voice to a whisper sharp enough to cut. You are the villain. You slept with your brother's wife in his house. I'm just handing you the sentence you earned. Something in him snapped. Jacob lunged from his chair with a roar, hurling himself at me. I was already ready. I sidestepped and brought the butt of the gun crashing down on his shoulder, a movement drilled into me years ago. His cry split the air as his weight dragged him down to one knee. In one motion, I grabbed his collar and yanked him forward, slamming his face against the desk. Papers fluttered and pens clattered to the ground. The cold barrel of my gun pressed against the back of his skull. Sophie screamed. Jacob went rigid, chest heaving, cheek mashed against scattered files. The thick vein at his temple throbbed beneath my gaze. Don't move, I said, my voice like ice cracking in winter. He trembled, rage and terror bleeding off him in waves, but he didn't resist. Sophie rose shakily from her chair, hands clasped tight against her chin, tears streaking her cheeks. Mark, please, she begged, voice breaking. Don't hurt him. For an instant, pity ghosted through me. Some faint, dead part of the man I used to be wondered how I had gotten here. She truly believed I might kill him, my own brother. And if I was honest, the thought had crossed my mind more than once in the sleepless nights of the past week. But staring at him now, broken, humiliated, stripped of the arrogance he wore like armor, killing him would have been mercy. Watching him rot in ruin, that was justice. He seemed so small under my grip. I loosened my hold on the gun just slightly, my voice quieter now, almost tired. If I wanted him dead, I'd have done it already, I told Sophie. Then, keeping Jacob pinned, I leaned close and spoke directly to him. I'm not going to kill you. Get on your feet. I stepped backward, loosening my grip on the gun. A few slow strides put space between us, and only when I was sure there was enough distance did I slip the weapon into my pocket. The point had been made. No more demonstrations were necessary. Jacob rose unsteadily, swaying as he pressed his palm to the side of his face. Blood streamed from his nose, a thin crimson trail from where it had slammed into the edge of the desk. He didn't come at me again. The fight had drained out of him. Whatever defiance had burned there was gone. Shoulders slumping, he collapsed into the closest chair, defeated. Sophie rushed to his side without hesitation. She dug into her pocket, pulling out a crumpled tissue and reaching toward him. He tried to shove her away, muttering something sharp, but she persisted, blotting at his blood until he gave up resisting. I stood apart, observing it all like a ghost hovering outside my own body. For a fleeting instant, they weren't the people who'd betrayed me. They were just two wrecked souls, caught in the aftermath of choices they couldn't undo. Their great love story had led here, cornered, humiliated, and bleeding in front of the man they'd destroyed. You've both lost, I said into the quiet that followed. My tone was steady, almost cold. There's no happy ending, not for you together, not apart. You'll drag this weight for the rest of your lives. Jacob's eyes dropped to the floor. His chest heaved unevenly as anger, grief, maybe both, fought inside him. Sophie's eyes glistened with tears when she looked up at me. We earned this, she whispered, voice breaking. I know we did. Jacob said nothing. His jaw locked tight, but somewhere deep inside he knew she was right. I crossed to the office door and turned the lock with a sharp click. Time to go, I said quietly. They both stared at me, startled, as though they'd expected more screaming, another round of rage. But I was done. Mark, Jacob began, faltering. He pushed himself to stand, wincing at the movement of his shoulder. I don't even know what to say. A bitter laugh escaped me. There's nothing left to say. You made your decisions. I made mine. Now we live with them. He gave a stiff nod and gingerly touched his still bleeding nose. Sophie took a step toward me, her voice trembling. Mark, I lifted a hand, stopping her cold. Don't. Whatever excuse or apology you've prepared, I don't want to hear it again. Fresh tears streaked down her cheeks. I loved you, she whispered. Some part of me always will. Something inside me twisted, fragments of love and pain I thought I'd buried, but I shoved it down, forcing my voice into evenness. That part of you died the moment you betrayed me, I said. It wasn't anger, just truth. The woman I loved doesn't exist anymore. Her knees buckled, and a soft sob tore from her throat. Jacob slid an arm around her shoulders, uncertain but steady enough to hold her. She turned into him, crying against his chest. I watched them, hollow and detached. Even now they clung to each other. Fine. Let them. Misery always finds someone to cling to. Get out, I said, swinging the door wide and motioning toward the hallway. Jacob led Sophie forward. As they passed, he hesitated, eyes cast down. Mark, he started. Don't call me that, I cut in, voice flat and exhausted. You forfeited that right. You forfeited being my brother. His face twisted in silent pain, but he held it together and nodded. Without another word, he guided Sophie out. I stood in the doorway, watching their figures retreat down the hall, shrinking with every step, until they vanished around the corner toward the alley. The heavy door shut behind them with a hollow thud. It was over. I closed the office door softly and locked it out of habit, not fear. Then I dropped into my chair. The adrenaline ebbed from my body, leaving me trembling, hollow. For a long while I busied myself with meaningless motions, stacking papers, tossing the bloody tissue into the trash, collecting pens from the floor, anything to quiet the silence. 2 weeks later, the chaos had faded. Jacob withdrew in disgrace, abandoning the election and slipping out of public view. Legal charges loomed over him like gathering storm clouds. Sophie and I divorced quickly. She left the city soon after, vanishing without ceremony. One still morning, I stood on the porch of my empty house, coffee warming my hand as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon. Cool air brushed against my face. For the first time in months, silence felt clean. In time, the media shifted its hunger toward fresher scandals, and my name dissolved into the forgotten chatter of yesterday. The fleeting infamy of being the scorned husband vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. No one ever uncovered my hand in the darker currents beneath that twisted episode. The official story laid the blame on some nameless figure lurking in political shadows. Jacob and Sophie remained silent, shackled by their own guilt, and too afraid to face an even harsher reckoning. Confessing the truth would have shattered them far more completely than I ever could have managed. I felt no pang of regret, no flicker of doubt. The experience had hardened me, yes, but it also left me oddly tranquil, almost at peace. As dawn crept across the horizon, I whispered to the memories still clinging to me. Was it worth it? A stray gust stole the words from my lips and carried them into the empty distance. For the first time since that catastrophic Tuesday night, the rage and ache inside me had burned away. They had lit the fire of betrayal, and I had turned everything they valued into ashes. Now, standing amid the quiet wreckage, I could finally move forward, alone but unbroken.